Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome guys, ahlan wa sahlan, marhaban bikum to this live stream. Can you guys hear me? Let me know if the sound's coming through. Inshallah, so that we can start. Ya Allah, it's been quite a while since I've done the last live stream, isn't it? So how is everyone here? Everyone been good? Okay, actually we did do a live stream when I was in Palestine, didn't it? Yeah, I think we did do one there. But anyway, we'll do one here inshallah. Right, so let me know if you guys can hear. Let me know if the sound's working. Is it on? Is it working? Yeah, can you guys hear? Just leave a comments, because I don't want to be speaking and then all of a sudden someone says, I can't hear. Then I'm going to repeat everything again. So let me know if the sound is working. Yeah, is the sound working? Can you guys hear? Okay, wa alaikum assalam, alhamdulillah. Okay, so alright, let's start then. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the benefits of mercy. So I was reading, or I was just kind of like reading some verses of the Quran, and mercy kept coming up, and it's a key feature of the Quran as well. We see this a lot, and it actually MashaAllah, wa alaikum assalam. Sound is clear. Sorry if I asked many questions. Don't worry about it. Don't worry, inshallah. Ammar Saeed, MashaAllah, my Bayt al-Haram. Dua for us, inshallah. Ammar, dua, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, may Allah reward you abundantly. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Will accept your Hajj as well. So, mercy is a key feature that we see in the Quran. And I'm thinking about doing maybe a course on mercy. I'm collecting some verses and other things as well on this idea of rahmah, of mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. Actually, just before I forget, let me just put this onto my Facebook. I think some people are waiting there. Right, so some of the things that mercy is something which obviously when we all read Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, two key names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, which are two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are from the root letters of Rahm, which means mercy as well. And so this kind of like gives us an indication that the Quran is a book filled with mercy. Allah is Allah who is full of mercy, and we have to understand the concept of mercy. And I think a few videos ago someone asked about mercy, and so it's kind of like, how does mercy work when we have concepts like jihad in the Quran? How does mercy work like that? Or adhab, punishment, how does it? So I think it's a very important thing to understand, especially with some of the things that I'm going to mention. So I'm not going to mention everything that I've kind of collected. I'm just going to touch upon some of the things, and I won't go into too much detail because I want to answer a lot of your questions as well. So some of the benefits of mercy. So number one, leadership cannot occur without mercy. In other words, for a person to be a great leader, for a person to have qualities of a leader inside of them, they must have a large large part of their characteristic must be molded by mercy. So mercy must be an integral part of that person's leadership, and we see this through all the prophets. We see this in the prophets, especially the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where mercy is considered to be the Ra'ufun Rahimun. And so without having mercy inside of us, it's not possible for us to be able to become unique leaders, to become powerful leaders, to become influential leaders. Yeah, I mean, there are other ways of becoming a leader in society. I mean, nowadays you can become a leader and you can run a country and everything, but you're going to have problems, and those problems are going to appear maybe in 10 years, maybe in 100 years, maybe even 1,000 years time, where problems will occur. So that's why leadership is key, and there's a lot to talk about this as well. How does mercy work in leadership? Examples of this from the Quran. Secondly, is leadership mercy when it comes to having the right moral compass. So having a strong moral compass inside yourself, you need to have mercy. It's not possible that a person can be morally upright and not have mercy, be void of mercy. And this is something which is key again in the lives of all the individuals that are upright in the Quran, prophets and those who follow the prophets and other people as well. So mercy is a key thing, right? So even if you look at things like in Islam as well, a person can have a let's say, for instance, can be a good person in the society, but that goodness might be based upon them following certain rules. So sometimes some people confuse the idea of someone being good because they're following the rules, whereas in reality, following those rules, if it's not governed by mercy, if it's not governed by a good moral foundation, then that person is just putting a show on. Right? They're just putting a show on. It's very hypocritical as well. So this is why moral compass requires mercy. You need to have strong mercy inside of yourself. And I'll do one more. And the third is when it comes to education as well. So when it comes to imparting knowledge, when it comes to learning knowledge, it's very important that a person has inside of them a strong understanding of mercy. And this is why mothers are such good teachers to their children. Women will be very good teachers, naturally, better than men. And when I say teachers, as in, maybe there might be a man who is very good at teaching a particular subject or a particular science or whatever, much better than a woman. But when it comes to imparting that knowledge, when it comes to kind of inculcating inside the person, inside the children or the students, that kind of mercy that they have for them, then those students, those children will just go away with information, and they won't go away with the tarbiyah, right? They won't go away with that kind of love and affection, and it all kind of fits in together as well again, because then the question of having a good moral compass comes again, right? So this is why it's very important for, like I said, for us Muslims to understand how mercy works. One of the things that we have in this society, which I've noticed a lot, is there's lots of like labels that people have, lots of qualifications, or lots of, you can say, positions that people have taken, but unfortunately sometimes those positions and the labels are just like an empty, sort of like a shell, and there's no substance inside of them. Whereas in reality, the Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala focuses on the substance, and everything else comes with it naturally. So I just thought I'd mention that. This is some of the things that came to my mind of mercy, and I'm thinking I'm at the moment collecting. I've actually got a new iPad. Right, this is it. I don't know if you guys can see it. So mashallah, if you guys do a lot of reading, if you guys do a lot of writing, if you guys like drawing like me, making images and pictures and things like that, then this is a very useful tool, because alhamdulillah, since I've got this, I actually didn't have an iPad before. I got it very recently. It's been about 3 weeks now, maybe less than a month, and I've benefited a lot from that, alhamdulillah. I've been able to do all the kind of stuff that I do in scattered places. I can do all in one place now, right? So all my books, or I can annotate my books as well. I can make notes as well. I can even do sketching as well, and so much more. There's so much that I can do, especially with the pen as well, writing with the pen. And also I'm trying to see if I can actually use this for for my the videos that I make. At the moment I still haven't figured it out yet, but inshallah maybe that's something also I can do with it as well. So technology, alhamdulillah, is a good thing, and we should try to utilize technology as much as possible. All right, so right, let's start with the questions then. And alhamdulillah, the iPad was actually part of it was from my students as well. So part of it was from my student. They wanted to buy me something, so I told them that whatever they were going to buy, I said, give me the money for that, and I'll put some money in. Alhamdulillah, may Allah reward them. So every time I'm doing something on this which is beneficial and people are going to benefit from it, the sadaqah jariyah that all those students are going to get, alhamdulillah. So I think this is the beneficial thing, that if anyone ever wants to get you something, I think you should try to get something which they're going to benefit from it as well, other people. I think that would be a very good thing for them as well. So I mean, all the kind of work that I do with it, all the alhamdulillah, inshallah they'll get a dividend of the reward. All right, so let's start off with the questions then. All right, so I think, if I'm not mistaken, all right, okay, so when a person prays seated on a chair, does the hadith not only mention praying standing, sitting, or one side? So when it comes to praying, the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned that if one is unable to stand, then he sits, and if he's unable to sit, then he lies down. Many of the scholars have said that the sitting should be done in the posture of salat. So the posture you sit in salat, basically, this is the posture that you should adopt, which is either the tawarruk position, where you put 2 feet out to the side, or the other position, which intisab rijl al-yumna, or the other position, right, which is a lot of the people do, where you sit on your left leg and you raise your right foot. So that's basically the ideal way that you should sit. However, if a person is unable to sit on the floor, then they can sit in any posture. As in, if you were to sit on a chair or anything else which is easier for you, then that's allowed. Personally, I think a lot of people nowadays just take the chair ruling very lightly. So instead of them sitting on the floor, what they do is they just quickly resort to sitting on a chair, which isn't technically right. They shouldn't be doing that. Although the salat will be accepted because the conditions are fulfilled, but it won't be a correct thing to do. So this is why, I think in the Maliki fiqh as well, this is the case as well, where sitting on a chair is considered disliked if you can't sit on the floor. So people should get that right. And if you can't sit on the floor, sit on the floor. But if you find it difficult to get onto the floor and back off the floor, right, that can be difficult for some people as well. So then they can sit on a chair. Yeah. Okay. Right. And the other thing to remember is, if the Prophet ﷺ mentioned something in the hadith, what the scholars try to understand is, was the Prophet ﷺ only saying this? Like, was he saying that you can only sit in these 3 postures, you can't sit in any other posture? Or was he just telling the people at their time the common postures of salat, 3 common postures, or 2 common postures of salat? Standing, sitting, lying down is not a posture of salat, but it's considered to be something which is known at that time. And if there was a chair or something else, what would he have said? If there were like chairs used in society as we use them today, because they're very common now, would he have said sit on a chair? So this is what the fuqaha try to look into, and try to kind of come up with the rulings. If a person was to pray while lying down, then how will this position his body? Will the feet be facing the qibla? What about when praying on one side? Yeah, so when lying down, there's 2 postures. One is where you lie down like this and your body is kind of like, so you imagine the qibla is south. If the qibla is south, for instance, you stretch yourself with your head towards the west, your feet towards the east, and you face southwards like that. Or you can actually put your head towards the north and put your feet towards the south. Yeah, Hanafis say the second is better. The Shafis say, if I'm right, the first one's better. But both are fine. According to Hanafis, whichever one you do for ease purposes is totally fine. And if you can't even do that, then whichever position, like if you're in a hospital and you're unable to move, right, you're in such a situation where you can't move, then it's fine. Then you can sit in whichever posture, lie down, whichever posture is easy for you. If someone is hospitalized, unable to get out of bed themselves, then is it necessary to make someone help them with wudu, or can they suffice with tayammum? What should someone hospitalized do with tayammum, to do tayammum with? Okay, yeah. So if a person is hospitalized and they can't get up to do wudu, but what they should do is ask someone to bring water for them, and if they can do wudu there, then they should try to do wudu there on the bed. If they can't do that, if they're in a situation where they can't actually move because movement will actually make the situation worse, then in that case they actually can do tayammum. Alright, so they can do tayammum, and to do tayammum according to Hanafis, all you need is basically a rock. You just need a rock, like just a plain rock, a stone, small stone, or maybe small piece of marble, yeah, and you can just touch that, and you can just wipe it. That's fine, totally fine. Yeah, so that's totally fine. You don't need to get someone unless a person can afford like a servant or something. That's different, but you don't need to. Okay, I want to understand a little how Islam views suicide. Is such a person condemned to hell forever, even if they did lots of good deeds? What about with depression becoming so widespread now? Just recently I heard about a young girl committing suicide because she didn't get good grades. I can't imagine the pain her family is suffering, firstly because of losing a child so tragically, and then secondly because of the stigma attached to suicide. Yeah, this is a very sensitive topic. I think again, see what happens with these topics is, because I remember once I went to a janaza and it was a person who had unfortunately passed away through suicide. So I mean, they said to me, I thought you're not supposed to do the janaza of someone who's committed suicide. So I said to them, I said, listen, I said, the janaza itself of a person who has committed suicide, what was the reason for that? As in, what was the reason for them killing themselves? Like, what do we know is going through their minds? So I think what people do is people seem to take a hadith. So people who are not trained in hadith studies, remember, if you're not trained in hadith studies, you should not be reading hadith. Right? That's a very, very serious topic. This is when it comes to reading a hadith. Don't try to come to conclusions just by reading a hadith, right? Because there are so many factors involved in trying to understand the hadith, and just a lay person just trying to understand what the hadith is saying, it doesn't give them legitimacy to act upon it, right? So this is why hadith has to always be studied under trained people, right? Or at least the lessons that we learn from hadith, we need to get it from trained experts. So I think what people do is they'll take a hadith about suicide or something, and they'll say, oh well, the hadith says this and we have to act upon it like this. That is a very dangerous thing, because you're coming to a conclusion of something with your limited knowledge. So imagine there's a whole vast database of hadith. You've just taken one or two hadith without even researching all the hadith and trying to understand the reasons behind the hadith, and is this hadith a short version of a longer hadith, and is this hadith to do with a particular individual or a group of people, is this hadith abrogated, is this hadith something that has been further explained by another hadith? Without doing any of that, some people will just take one hadith or two hadith that they've seen on the internet somewhere, and they'll come to conclusions and they'll be issuing their own understanding of that hadith to everyone else. That's dangerous, that is, because then you're going to have 100 people coming up with 100 different understandings of that hadith, right? And this is a very dangerous thing. I think people should be very cautious about this. That's why the madhab, the fiqh madhab, is a very safety net, because the madhab is hundreds and thousands of scholars are looking at the same sources and coming up with the conclusions, but they're coming up with it through a rigorous methodology approach. So yeah, you can pray the janazah of a person who has in this situation committed suicide, and because there's so many kind of reasons for why a person can commit suicide, Allah knows best. And those people in the time of the Prophet ﷺ who committed suicide, let's say, and the Prophet ﷺ, let's say, he said he saw a man, this is Sahih Bukhari, sees a man and this man is fighting in the battle, and then someone comes to him and says, Messenger of Allah, that guy over there, and points at him. He says, this guy is just the most amazing believer I've ever seen, the way he fights and sincerity. The Prophet ﷺ said, no, he's in the fire of Jahannam. They were all shocked. And then he says, all of a sudden, a little while later, this guy gets wounded, he takes his arrow and he kills himself. So in other words, why did he end up in the fire? Why did the Prophet ﷺ say he ended up in the fire? We don't know. I mean, we don't know why he ended up in the fire. Allah knows best. Maybe he was a hypocrite. Maybe he was someone who was just putting a show on, and the Prophet ﷺ, Allah told him what this guy really is all about. And it kind of manifested right at the end. So that killing himself wasn't the reason why he entered the fire. It could have been something else, but it just manifested like that. So this is why we have to understand, unfortunately, there are people out there who commit suicide. It's a very bad thing. Men and women, and unfortunately children as well, that are committing it. And we have to understand that Allah is the judge. Right? Allah is the ultimate judge. And we don't have the Prophet ﷺ amongst us to be able to tell us why people are dying for and where they're ending up. So we just have to judge them by the apparent. And we say, you know what, this person was a good person. And this person, Allah knows best why they did what they did, what was going through their mind, especially with mental illnesses nowadays. So we have to be, I think we have to be more compassionate. Very important. Yeah. So again, with suicide, we can't say that they're going to Jahannam or anything like that. Never can we say that. What we do is make dua for them, and we console them. We go for their janazas. Yeah. What should a person do if they got prize through impermissible raffle tickets during their childhood? Is there anything necessary on the person if they still have the item during the adulthood? What they should do is, the value of the item they should give in charity. Yeah, so the value of the item, whatever the item is worth, let's say, slowly give in charity. If they want to give the item away in charity, that's fine as well. You mentioned that swearing in general, if it is not directed at someone, is permitted, although morally wrong. Would this mean that if there are swear words in poetry, it is not unlawful? That's correct, yeah. So like swearing itself is not considered to be a sin. However, two things are considered to be a sin. Where you swear at someone, where the swear is actually something which is a slander, form of slander. Yeah. Or you swear at someone and the swear is considered to be for instance, some sort of accusation that is being made against a person, even though it might be correct, but it could be something which leads to like a criminal penalty offense. It's an offense. Like you call someone a fornicator, and even though they might be a fornicator, but you call them a fornicator, you are the one in wrong for calling them that. So this is why a person should ideally avoid. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in one narration, he disliked those people who were filthy mouthed. Now, if the Prophet ﷺ dislikes someone who's filthy mouthed, then obviously any sort of upright person would avoid swearing. So swearing, and this comes in poetry as well. You have this. So again, if it's for a valid reason, then there's scope for it. Okay, is playing the duf permitted when the poetry or song contains words of praise of Allah, like Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar, or sending salah on the Prophet ﷺ? Since these phrases are in themselves worship, since worship is restricted, how Allah has ordained it. Is playing the duf permitted? So playing the duf is permitted, yeah, by many scholars. It's considered to be permissible because the Prophet ﷺ had allowed the people of the Ansar to use this. It's a form of that kind of musical instrument which is allowed. As for musical instruments that are made from strings or wind or other, those are considered to be disputed among scholars. Using the duf when it comes to saying like dhikr or things like that, that's basically what you're doing. So when you're using the duf, you're duf, it's called duf with a dhamma. When you're using the duf, it's actually considered to be allowed. However, many fuqaha have said it's something they're saying it's something that women do and children do. As in, in their days, in the days of the early Muslims, it was something men didn't used to do that. It wasn't like a manly thing to do that. So this is why people should avoid it. The fuqaha say. However, with it becoming very widespread and very common in gatherings later on in the years, many of the scholars kind of said, right, well, in their early days, it was something unique to women, so men were told not to do it because it was a form of imitating women, right? So now that it's become widespread, so now it's permissible. This issue of using it as an act of worship, when we say act of worship, like, what do we mean as act of worship? Like, do we mean this? Me saying subhanallah is act of worship, or me saying subhanallah with the duf is act of worship? There's a difference between the two. So for instance, like, studying knowledge is an act of worship. Yeah. Going to sleep with the intention of getting up for Fajr in the morning is an act of worship. So the impermissibility in acts of worship is where you consider something with the thing that you've added to it to be an act of worship as well. Does that make sense? So this is why I don't think it would be problematic. What I would think it would be problematic in would be something like maybe reading the Quran. Yeah, so the Quran you shouldn't have any musical instruments with the Quran itself. That should be avoided. But I mean, I don't see any problem with Allahu Akbar or salutations with the daf. I don't see any problem with that. Yeah, so when it comes to the acts of worship which are prescribed by the Sharia, that are a specific type of act of worship, right? Like salat. So you wouldn't be doing it in salat. It wouldn't be like saying to someone, right, I'm going to pray my salat, and you in the background just do daf so that my salat, increases in, I get like a high buzz or something. Anyway, is selling virtual coins or characters from games permitted for actual money? I'll need more details about this. I can't understand exactly what the scenario is. Selling virtual coins or characters from games permitted for actual, possibly, because I know now some of these games can actually be very expensive. So people can reach a certain level in a game where they actually start selling their games or their accounts on eBay. And there's like famous stories of people selling some accounts for crazy money, like, I don't know, £50,000 or something. So possibly. It depends scenario again. If someone from Birmingham stays in London for 10 days, then they shorten their prayers. If they then stay in a neighbouring city for 10 days, then will they still shorten their prayers? Yes. Yeah. So if you stay in a place for less than 15 days, and then you're going to go to another city and stay there for less than 15 days, you shorten in both areas. If the person in London intends to stay for a month and then goes to Leeds, more than 48 miles away for shopping and not to reside there, would they shorten their prayers? So if the person intends to stay in London, so if they've gone to a place but they're intending to come back at night time, yeah, so night time they're intending to come back there, then they would pray their complete salat. Yeah, they pray their complete salat. Okay, it depends exactly when they go for shopping as well. Exactly when do they go for shopping? What is the minimum sajda when praying with the head movement seated, and how would that compare to ruk? I think I answered this before. So you just lower your head slightly. It doesn't have to be too much, just slight lowering of the head. There's no measurement. If for sujood, slightly lower. So I normally do this if I can't pray standing, like this, and then like that. That's it. You don't have to go too low. What is the minimum sajda when praying with the head movement seated, and how would that compare with ruku? Okay. If someone is praying seated, then if the minimum ruku is to tilt the head, then what happens if they tilt their head while reciting the Quran, not intending to go into ruku? It won't, because it's your intention. Because this is ishara. This is ishara with the intention of ruku. Yeah, intention of ruku. Would that not be like going into ruku while reciting? No, it wouldn't be, because it wouldn't be ruku itself. Yeah, it's ishara. This is an ishara, and the ishara would only be counted when you're intending ruku. Yeah, so it's not an orthodox ruku. It's just like a sort of gesture that you're making, and for a gesture you need intention. So if you haven't intended to do ruku, your gesture is considered to be insignificant. If someone adds alifs in their mads in salah, would that break the salah? E.g. in walad dallin? No, it wouldn't. It would possibly nullify it in certain places in the Quran, right? But for that you need to know Arabic. And when it comes to these kind of Quran kind of masail, what I say is, and my teacher said this as well, he said, for non-Arabs, people who don't understand the Quran, for them there is a lot of scope in making mistakes in recitation of the Quran in salat, because it's not their fault. They don't understand the Quran. So If someone is making ghusl and bleeds while wudu be included in that? No, they'll have to repeat their wudu again. Yes, because if you're bleeding, your wudu is broken. Ghusl is only nullified by ejaculation, orgasm, penetration, haid, etc. Is it a problem for someone who has not done Hajj to perform Umrah in the months of Hajj? Someone who has not done Hajj to perform Umrah in the months of Hajj, e.g. someone is in Mecca for Ramadan and stays after Eid and performs Umrah in Shawwal. No, if they haven't made intention for Hajj, then no. But they should avoid being there. I can't exactly remember. I'll have to come back to this one. Yeah, but from what I remember, yeah, they can perform Umrah as long as they haven't made intention for Hajj. If someone goes on Hajj with unlawful money, would their Hajj be done? Yes, the Hajj technically will be done, but they would get no reward for it. If someone has unlawful wealth and want to go for Hajj, is this still permitted? Okay, I think I answered this one. Can a Hanafi take Lucknowi's opinion on the permissibility of combining Salat? Why did some Hanafi scholars combine, like Sheikh Abdul Fattah? Does Sheikh Lucknowi say combine? I don't know. I mean, if you can show me where he says that, I'm not sure I've come across that. If you can show me, yeah. I mean, Mufti Taqi Usmani himself sometimes combines. I've heard him himself say, but he only does it when he knows that he's not going to be able to pray the salats on time. Yeah. So the combining of the salats, he'll take the Shafi position. It's not a Hanafi position. It's going out the madhab, taking a Shafi position for need, for necessity, and he Mufti Taqi Usmani does that. So it would be permissible. I think that the thing people fail to understand is when you study Hanafi fiqh, I need to explain this. There's different levels of people who study Hanafi fiqh. There's those people who have just, like, imagine there's like 10 steps of Hanafi fiqh. There's those people who have just studied like a basic text in Hanafi text, like a first step, second step. For them, everything in Hanafi fiqh is considered to be black and white. So for them, it's like very black and white. They can't really see the kind of like the different shades of Masail. Then you have the person who has studied a large amount of Hanafi fiqh. Yeah, so the understanding of Hanafi fiqh is very extensive. So they're on the step 8, 9, and 10. That person understands the madhab very, very well, right? And they can tell exactly how much scope there is. And in the Hanafi madhab, there's also this issue of a person acting upon a particular mas'ala for themselves, even though they may not have like authority to be able to tell other people this is the Hanafi madhab. So sometimes you have in the Hanafi school, you have like 4 or 5 opinions of a particular mas'ala. You might only be aware of one opinion. Yeah, you're only aware of one opinion, like opinion number 2, let's say, out of the 4. So you always think to yourselves, this is the Hanafi opinion, where technically it's not necessarily. It's the one which many scholars might have kind of given their fatwa on. Then what happens is the expert can look at all the opinions, and for him, he can incline towards whichever one he feels is stronger, or he feels that more inclined towards. And this is something which, like, for example, like what time does Asr start? So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah himself is reported to have like 4 opinions in this himself. 4 opinions. The famous one that many people know is that Asr starts when the shadow, and I showed you guys when I was in Palestine, the shadow. When the shadow of an object in the afternoon reaches two size of itself. Yeah, it becomes double its own size. That's the famous one. But there's other opinions he has as well of this. So this is why it's very important for people who study have to kind of understand that. Okay, so I don't know about the Imam Lucknowi's position, Abdullah Lucknowi's. I mean, if someone could maybe show me that position, I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen it, but he might have it. If some, so cast, I mean, should be fine, because the cast you only wear it in your arm or your leg, isn't it? And on the foot, as long as the top of the foot is exposed, it's fine. If someone is continuously bleeding but is not ma'zur, then when should they pray the current salah? They should try to delay as much as possible. until its last time. Can translations be held without wudu? There's a difference of opinion. So some of the Hanafis are quite strict on this, like Imam Hidayah is quite strict on this. He says no. And others, Hanafis, have said as long as you're not touching Arabic text. So there's like a difference of opinion on this. And I think the reason was because writing wasn't very common when the early scholars mentioned the fatwa of not touching the translation. Like written forms of Arabic text wasn't very widespread and common, and nowadays it's extremely common now. It's like very, very common, more common than they could ever imagine. So I think that there is more permissibility nowadays to touch the translation, because it's not considered to be the Quran itself, it's considered to be an interpretation of the Quran. When does not praying the Quran become sinful? Not praying the Quran, I mean, I don't understand that question. When does not praying the Quran, not reading the Quran? I mean, it's never sinful to not read the Quran, but obviously you got to read the Quran in Salat. So if you know Quran and you don't read it in Salat, that's going to be considered sinful. Is not attempting to understand the Quran by a translation sinful? Is not attempting to understand the Quran by a translation sinful? Is attempting to, I don't understand are you saying is not attempting is like not trying to learn the Quran, not trying to learn the meaning of the Quran? Is that sinful? Is that what you're saying? That if a person spends their entire life and they make no attempt to understand the Quran, is that sinful? Or are you saying is attempting to understand the Quran translation sinful? Okay, so let me just explain if I've understood this question correctly. If a person lives, let's say, for 40, 50, 60 years of their life, and they have made no attempt to understand the translation of the entire Quran, would this be considered sinful? So what's the aim of the Quran? The aim of the Quran is to get the message to the people, right? So what's the message to the people? To worship Allah, to pray salat, to give zakat, etc. Basically what Islam is all about. So if a person understands what Islam is about, and they don't really need to read the Quran themselves or understand the Arabic of the Quran, that's fine then, because they've kind of got what the Quran is about. The Quran is about getting close to Allah through the things that He said in the Quran. And if a person basically was basically studying fiqh, because fiqh is the interpretation of the Quran, it's like a translation of the Quran, so therefore it'd be considered fine. So there's many people in the world now who practice Islam, and the way they understand Islam is by going to an expert and asking the expert of, for example, if I have a zakat issue, how do I do this? Or if I have a hajj issue, how do I do this? Or you guys ask me, for example, and I try my best through my own experience to try and explain things to you. You're understanding the Quran through me, so then it would be fine. It wouldn't be sinful. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Does sajda tilawa need to when listening to a verse on device? No, you don't have to sajda tilawa if it's not live. You listen to it loudly. Wa alaikum assalam. What's your stance on Abu Layth person spreading alarming amounts of fitna on the internet? So, I think when people ask me about individuals, I have a general rule of the thumb. If you ever read all of my Facebook posts or anything, I never ever criticize any particular individual, right? And the simple reason is because we don't have to criticize people. And I think people think that you have to speak up against individuals, even though you know nothing about them. You must speak up against them, and this is totally wrong as well. So I don't think it's necessary. Yes, if someone asks me about a particular individual, what do you think I should listen to this person or not? I tell them. Like, for example, with regards to Abu Layth, I would say no, don't listen to him, right? Because a lot of the things that he has said, I think, are very, very problematic in Islam. So I personally would say to people, it's best to avoid listening to him, right? Unless you are very well learned in Islam and you can understand the things that he's saying and you can see the mistakes that he makes. As for criticizing him for other reasons, I mean, same with other people. If someone says to me, "What do you think of Brother Nomali Khan?" or "What do you think of Sheikh Hamza Yusuf?" or "What do you think of this person?" I don't know these people. I don't know these people personally to that level where I can exactly say what they like. So I personally, I think people should adopt that kind of mentality as well, because lots of people on social media are very much into debating, and they like to bring down people. And a lot of the debating done online is just to prove a point. So sometimes what happens is you'll see people, arguing in comments on Facebook and other things, and even on social media, YouTube, and all they're trying to do is put the other person down. They're not searching for the truth. They're not trying to say, you know what, Ya Allah, I'm going to ask a question now, Ya Allah, and if this question, if whatever that scholar says to me and it sounds right, I'm going to act upon it. Very few people, I think, do that, right? If you are searching for the truth, have you really asked Allah when you're asking a question? Have you really asked Allah, Ya Allah, look, whatever answer the scholar gives me, Ya Allah, find the truth for me? Or are you asking the question because there's other people listening or watching, and you think, you know what, I'm going to make a point of my question. I want other people to listen to what I have to say. And I think that is a bit of an ego problem there. And we have this ego problem, which is that we want to make ourselves, we want to bring down other people, and make ourselves the ones who are the means for that, which is, destroying the ummah. And if you're happy with destroying the ummah, then, فَلْيَتَفَضَّل. May Allah protect us from that. But yeah, I think we've got to be very careful about these kind of things, about, criticizing other people without having firm knowledge of this. Yeah, and if we look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we see is basically the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever he would criticize someone, he would rarely mention them by name. A very rare situations you'd get where he mentions someone by name, but he would just generally kind of mention certain things about them. He would say, such and such a person, who is such and such a person who says this, and who is such and such, you should avoid them, and this and that. So that's one of the amazing qualities of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anyway, next question. Okay, right. Is it wrong if we give a present to one sibling and not the other? If you are closer to one sibling, no, nothing wrong with it. The only thing I would say is, look, do you think it's going to cause a fight? Right? And if you think it's going to cause a fight, you know exactly what you should do. Right? So you don't need to ask a scholar about this. Yeah, you just have to think about it yourself. Right, so there's nothing wrong with it. Does Sajda Tilawa need to, when listening to a verse on a device? We did this already. If someone has a debt and is stipulated that if they die, then it is waived, then will that mean that there will not be any accountability for it in the hereafter? If yes, then if someone has a student loan, then should they make a priority to pay the money off, even though it will be waived off if they die? Yeah, it's fine. If someone has put this condition that, look, if you die, then you don't have to pay me, that's fine. It's waived. Yeah, no accountability for it, because it's a loan is in the hands of is all in the hands of the one that gives the loan. If they want to waive the debt, totally fine. Alhamdulillah, it's rewarding. If someone has a student loan and is paying it off, then should they choose to pay more than what they ask for, pay for it off quickly, or is it fine to stick to the amount they stipulate and not worry about paying it off, since it will be waived upon death? I don't know. Can you pay off the student loan more? I'm not sure about that. Because most of the student loans I've come across are fixed. You can't change them. You can't pay off more. But I might be wrong. About that. Yeah. So if it is going to be, if you have the choice, right? If you have the choice about paying off a loan, I think pay it off as quick as possible so that you don't incur more interest. Yeah. So pay off as much as possible. If you can't, then that's fine. And I think most student loans, if I'm I don't know, someone might correct me, are fixed. You mentioned that a gift cannot be taken back if it is built upon or added to. Does this apply if someone is gifted a book and writes his name in it with a pen or pencil? Actually, a good question that is. I don't know, No, I don't think, because it's not really kind of adding any extra value to it. It's not adding value to it. It's not adding something of your own. Well, actually, the ink, isn't it? Ink. Possibly. Yeah, possibly. غير تغيير. I don't know. I haven't really thought about this one. Good question though. Okay, I'm not sure. I don't know about that. When can the Prophet ﷺ hear our greeting to him? Do we have to be in front of his grave, saying it loud enough for the sound to reach the grave, or can it be said silently anywhere in the masjid? What is the best answer based on? I mean, giving the Prophet ﷺ a greeting is all something which is amr ghaibi, right? It's something beyond the realm of this realm. So because it's beyond this realm, we have to understand it as how the Prophet ﷺ told us. So when we give salam to the Prophet ﷺ, Allah enables the Prophet ﷺ to be able to hear through the angels. So therefore you don't have to shout out the Prophet ﷺ. And when you are near his grave, you should always have respect for him, because the Quran even says, don't call the Prophet ﷺ like you call one another. Yeah, so I think this is okay. I think this is a very important thing to remember as well. So if I go to the Prophet ﷺ's grave, I just quietly just say Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, yeah, and then give salam to his companions as well. So it's something which you just, out of etiquette, you give. How would you speak to the Prophet ﷺ if he was there in front of you? Would you shout? You wouldn't shout. It's out of respect. Okay, is it permitted to say salam to someone of opposite gender on the street passing by, as one does to those of the same gender? Is it permitted to say salam to someone of the opposite gender on the street passing by, as one? If there is no reason for it, you shouldn't. Right? The scholars have mentioned about the reason giving salam to an opposite gender on the street. If there's no reason for it, it could just kind of like lead to fitna. So for example, every day you're passing by, you see this nice lady standing at the bus stop, and every day you go by and you give her salam, every day you give her salam. Salam could turn to something else eventually. So this is why the scholars in the books of fiqh have mentioned that giving salam to the opposite gender, if there's no need for it, then. But if it's something where it's something like, for example, a dars, class lesson, and you're teaching someone, you're teaching a class, and amongst them men and women, ladies it's a lady, and you give her salam. So there's a need, yeah, you give salam. It's fine. There's no sense as well. Is it permitted to insert money into an arcade machine to have a chance to win prizes? No. Depends exactly what the arcade machine is, but I'm assuming it's a gambling machine. Is doing taqeed al-mubah permitted, or is it like making something permissible haram? It depends. This is a big topic. It depends. You gotta give a scenario. Yeah. So taqeed al-mubah, for example, like giving salam is mubah, but then restricting it, like we just said, that if we say, look, you can't just go to women on the streets and start giving them salam. Yeah, So because there's other reasons behind it, the impermissibility is because of other things, other factors. If someone makes a generic joke and people get offended, are they sinful? Making a joke about men in general. Not really. I mean, if it's not derogatory. If you're making a joke and you're being derogatory against the Prophet ﷺ, and the Quran has also said, "La yaskhur qawmun min qawmin." People should not degrade, another people, make fun of other people in a degrading way. Then if it's degrading, then no. If it's not degrading, if it's just like a bit of amusement, then it's fine. But if it's amusement and most likely that it's gonna hurt other people's feelings, like this in your back of your mind, it's gonna make a lot of people laugh, right? Then I think you should avoid it. Then you would be wrong. And the thing is, nowadays with comedy, see what's happened nowadays is a lot of Muslim comedians are using Islam as a means of making people laugh. So they're kind of making fun of Islam, might even be making fun of prophets, might even making fun of God, right? And they're just saying, well, it's only a laugh. So it's like they will, just to kind of fit in with everyone, they are willing to give up their own, compromise their own principles, which is wrong. Yeah, Islamically it's wrong. And even if the whole society is doing it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go and do it. So I think people should be very careful of making jokes, and this kind of habit of making jokes, becoming like a pranks, and this kind of culture. It's a very toxic kind of culture. And nowadays there's online memes people make, and sometimes, subhanallah, I read things online and I see what people do and they say, and you can tell they're doing it for a joke, but it's like very borderline with backbiting. Yeah, borderline backbiting, borderline slandering. And then it's like, where are you being a Muslim if you can't be a Muslim online? If you can't hold the principles of Islam online, and you're willing to, just to make a few people laugh, you're willing to throw out your principles, then where is your Islamic values? So I think people have to understand that when making a joke, your intention is not to offend anybody, and the joke ends up, if your intention is not to offend anybody, there are some snowflakes out there. Anything you say, they're going to be saying like, how dare you say that? So if there are people who are offended by anything that someone says, and nowadays that's also a mentality as well, it's a mindset. Like you might say something like, say, some joke, I don't know, about, let's say, a dumb person, a clever person and a dumb person and an alien. They went into a bar, and then someone says, you shouldn't say that because that's offensive against dumb people. How would you like if someone said that about you? So you're always going to get that kind of thing. So if it's like that, then that joke, there shouldn't be anything wrong with it. A general. What about the Prophet ﷺ joked with old woman about Jannah and she cried? What about the incidents of Nu'ayman? So I see a lot of these narrations we have to be very careful of. A lot of these narrations are not established. And those that are established, we have to understand the Prophet ﷺ, he had a natural fear about himself that people had in their hearts, an awe. So the Prophet ﷺ, he felt sometimes that he needed to break the ice with people. So the Prophet ﷺ, just to break the ice, he would say certain things which were like very simple things, but they were humorous and people found them funny. And the Prophet ﷺ did this. That wasn't his habit, because we know it wasn't his habit. He never always did it. So we can't really compare ourselves with the Prophet ﷺ in that sense. But I would say, joking around, we have to look at the hadith as well, and how the Prophet ﷺ, he said it, and all the versions of that hadith, and how did she cry, and maybe he knew her very well, maybe she was a very soft lady, maybe she's someone that we don't know. So we can't just take from this particular narration that now we can go to all old women and we can do pranks on them, and as soon as they start crying and have a heart attack, we just say to them, it's a joke, and it's sunnah to do this. I think that's another example of where people who are untrained in hadith science, they go and they start to kind of come to conclusions themselves. How do we understand Nu'ayman? Nu'ayman's narration is considered to be a weak narration. It's considered to be a weak narration. And even if it is considered to be permissible, many of the scholars have said that Nu'ayman's narration was considered to be in the beginning of Islam, and then later on in Islam it was abrogated. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, some Sahaba were like joking about with someone, and they hid his stick, and then he was really upset, and the Prophet ﷺ said that it doesn't befit a Muslim to scare another Muslim for no reason. So to basically play a prank on another Muslim until he gets scared, you shouldn't do that. Right? So these kind of narrations, we have to understand that humor is fine in Islam. Being funny is fine in Islam. Being funny at the expense of another Muslim's honor, being funny at the expense of criticizing another nation, being funny at the expense of criticizing your own religion, Allah, these are things which are very dangerous, and a person should avoid these kind of things, right? Because if you joke too much about these kind of things, people lose respect for you as well. And Umar radiallahu anhu used to say, man kathura dhahikuhu istakhaffa, whoever just jokes around too much, he becomes light in the eyes of people. He has no value. So we should keep our dignity as well, and find humor and these kind of things. Alhamdulillah, our scholars in the past, there's many books that they wrote about this. Some are very sarcastic people, so that's totally fine. But degrading, I think, is wrong. What are the ways of offering witr prayer that are narrated in the reports? All the different ways. Okay, let me just tell you, for witr, this is mentioned by the commentators of hadith. They mentioned there's over 16 different ikhtilafs in witr. 16 now. I'm not talking about whether you do dua kunut or not. That's one ikhtilaf. There are 16. All the narrations, you put them together, you'll find 16 different ikhtilafs. The number of rakats, is it 1 rakat, is it 3 rakats, is it 5 rakats, etc. Do you sit after the 2 rakats? Do you read dua qunut? Do you read Fatiha and Surah in the last rakat? What time do you pray it? Can you pray it twice? What time can you pray it before Isha, after Isha? All these kind of things, right? There are multiple narrations. Many of the scholars have said, like Sheikh Yusuf Banoui rahimahullah, he says a lot of these ikhtilafs are just which one is better. At the end of the day, the witrs are all considered to be valid per se, but which one's more better according to the Hanafis, which one is more correct according to their principles that they follow, the Hanafis have theirs. And which one is more correct according to the principles that are followed by the Shafi'is, then these particular methods, etc. Right, so to say which one is, what are the ways, there's lots. It's going to take me ages to go through them. Okay, if a person purchases clothing from a store and got something extra, is it required of them to go through the hassle of returning the extra thing? Yes. No, they don't have to return it. They just contact the dealer and tell them, look, you've sent something extra. Tell them what they want to do with it. Yeah. So they shouldn't have to charge them sending it back, because you're not obliged to charge. If they're not going to come for it, you just keep it as an amana trust. Yeah. So, but you are considered to be not allowed to use it unless the permission is given. If someone buys a book and gets another book in place of that by a store, then what options do the person have? Again, the same answer. Yeah. Contact the dealer and ask the dealer, because Islamically, you only become owner of what was agreed upon. So if it was agreed upon for a particular book and they sent you the wrong book, yes, it's their fault that they sent the wrong book, but you don't become the owner of their mistake. Yeah, so you only become the owner of that thing. So you have purchased that particular book that they had agreed to, so you can only keep that one, and the other book is not yours. And whenever they want to come for it, they come for it and take it. And in many cases, they don't want it back. What should the imam do if, once it happened to me, I bought some earphones, and my earphones, basically what happened was, it's got like 3 buttons on this. Those, I think it's these ones over here. Yeah, so these ones basically, yeah. So what happened was, the button wasn't working. Yeah, the button wasn't working. So what happened was, I contacted the supplier, who was on Amazon, and I told him that it's not working. And they said, fine, we'll send you another pair. And I go, okay. And then what happened was, I checked and I was pressing the wrong button. Yeah, my mistake. And I found I was pressing the wrong button. Eventually I found the right button, and it worked. So I contacted them a few days later, and I said to them that my earphones work now. I don't need the other pair. They go, well, we've sent it out now. And I said, okay, what should I do with it? He goes, keep it, it's all right, because it's gonna cost us to get it back than it cost anyway. But the thing was, they didn't even send it. Yeah, so I don't know what happened. They didn't send it to me. But if I did get that would be free for me, because they agreed to it. They were fine with it. Okay. Perform sajda, and then he goes, performs wudu, comes back and joins the salat. Yeah, so in sajda, you're obviously not going to walk in sajda. It's not practical to walk in sajda. You get up, yeah, walk forward, and then the other person takes over. The imam has the tashahhud left and accidentally breaks his wudu. Does he merely have to bring someone forward to do the salam? Yes. Would the follower just stand up from his place, go forward and sit down? Yes, that's what he does. If the imam or follower does bina after breaking wudu, then do they have to pray the salah at a specific place? No, they don't have to. They should ideally try to join the salat again, and if they can't join the salat again, it's finished, then they can do it anywhere they want. Would they just do takbir tahrima? No, they don't do takbir tahrima. They just continue the salat from where they left off, and then go into posture. They broke their wudu in counting the rakat, or would they pray the entire cycle again? If he broke the wudu in qiyam mid recitation, then should he begin from Fatiha or mid recitation? Mid recitation, yeah, wherever he left it off. After Usul Shashi, what Usul book would you recommend? Nur al-Anwar. Yeah, Nur al-Anwar. Can I pray the Quran with the part of my aura exposed? Yes, you can, but it's not ideal. Are mixed weddings in and themselves permitted if the setting is kept like restaurants? Possibly, yeah. Yeah, so when I think when people say mixed weddings, I think the image that people get in their head is like men hugging women and women dancing on men's heads and all that. I don't think generally mixed wedding. I've been to some mixed weddings, yeah. Because I've been like invited to a wedding, let's say for example, and it's considered mixed. Mixed as in there's no barrier in the middle, right? Normally, I would advise people to have a barrier and to have men on one side and women on the other side. But let's say, for example, I turned up to a wedding and it was like that, and families sitting on each table. So you have one family sitting there, another family there, another family there. As long as the women are covered up, as long as you're covered up and you attend these things, I don't see it to be a very big issue, right? It's not like committing a major sin for doing so. But if there is other things going on in that wedding, right, nudity or other things which are prohibited in Islam, then you shouldn't attend the wedding, right? So when we say like mixed weddings, we need to rephrase that again. We say, okay, the wedding's going to be a wedding where every family sits at their own table, families per table, right, where you sit with your brothers and sisters and your wife and your daughters and your uncles and aunties all in one area. Then I think wording it better, I think would be better for people. But if it's a mixed wedding where you got to dance with another woman and you got to sit next to her and hold some, non-mahram's hand or something, then that's impermissible. Okay, is looking at statues of animate life permissible? If it's naked, no, you should avoid it. Yeah, if it's naked, like breasts are showing and area around the pubic area, no. And if it's obviously like it looks exactly like a human being. What is the ruling on translations being held without wudu? And obviously, if you look at a statue and you just see it, you go to a museum and you just see, just lower your gaze. You don't have to keep looking at it. Okay, can a phone screen be? Why is the ruling on translation being held without wudu? I mentioned this before. Can a phone screen be touched when it has Quran written on it? What is the reasoning behind it? There's ikhtilaf amongst this. Some scholars say yes, you can touch it. Some scholars say you don't. I personally prefer not to touch it. Are mortgages in the UK permitted depending on circumstances? I think I mentioned the mortgage masala many times. It's depending on circumstances. If a person's in a situation where it's difficult to get rented accommodation, or rented accommodation is possible but it's gonna use up all of their savings on then I think there's possibility to get the house that you're living in, to get a mortgage on that. There's scope for it. Yeah. Is it wajib for the one praying alone to pray Fatiha in the last 2 rakats of a Fard Salah quietly? No, it's considered to be sunnah. Do you know of a tafsir series in Arabic from the start of the Quran? I think Sheikh Sha'rawi, Egyptian, I think he might have one. It's called Sheikh Sha'rawi. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't really kind of like follow any, but Sheikh Sha'rawi, I think he had one. Okay. Salam Sheikh, hopes as well you are the only specialist I am aware of that I can ask for reliable information on. It pertains to multiple variables being, are student loans permissible UK based? I ask this as I have previously taken these loans out to complete my degree with and to study a postgraduate degree. I may need to take another. I recently found out some muftis consider it to be impermissible. Some scholars consider it to be fine. You can take that position. Yeah, because I think you've got to look at practicality now, because we've got a whole, a group of youngsters now in the UK, right? A whole generation of them that want to go into university, but they can't afford the fees, and working at the same time is not going to be practical, right? I know some people who have actually worked and haven't taken any loans, alhamdulillah, and they've completed their course and actually come top in their courses. But yeah, there are many scholars who do permit it, so you'd be able to take that position. If so, should one pay by the stipulated contract details automatic deductions when one's wages has reached threshold, or strive to pay it off as quick as possible? I don't know if you can pay it off as quick as possible. If you can pay it off quick as possible, then yeah, you should do that, because you don't want to incur more interest. Student loan is said to be wiped when that person passes away. Oh, I think you're the same guy who asked that question before, yeah? Right, so yeah, so I mentioned this before. If a woman has started her period during Dhuhr, not having prayed Dhuhr yet, would that be due on her after the period finishes? No, it wouldn't. Right, so you basically look at the last moments of the Salat. Every Salat, the last moments. If a woman is in the state of menstruation, in the last moments of her Salat, the last 10 minutes, let's say, if she's in menstruation there, then the Salat is not necessary to repeat. Okay, is it permitted to give a Jummah khutbah using PowerPoint? Yes, why not? If a Quran class collectively recite an ayah of sajda, how many sajda tilawahs are due? So let's say you got 10 people and each one of them reads the same ayah. Technically you have to do for 10. However, I would say this is haraj if it's like a regular thing. Therefore, because they're all reading the same ayah, then you'd only have to do it once. So after you've heard all of them, just do it once. Is it wajib to sit through the Eid khutbah if it's going on? Yes. It's wajib to listen to it and not move. Imam Nawawi says that there is no sound hadith that shows that there are two separate Eid khutbahs. What is the reasoning for those who do khutbah? The Hanafis say basically it's qiyas onto Jummah khutbah. Yeah, so the hadith, there's a narration of Ibn Abbas, it's considered to be weak, and there's a narration of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. However, the general books they mention, what is it? Qiyas onto Jummah. So Jummah has two khutbahs, so therefore the Eid has two khutbahs. How is the ruling of staying in Makkah and Alright, so I'm going to have a little break now because I'm tired. So I'm going to have a little 5-minute break here. So inshallah I'll be back in 5 minutes inshallah. So 5 minutes, I'm going to make myself some green tea inshallah. And in 5 minutes I will be back. So stay tuned inshallah. And I will see you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay. Hope you guys are all well. Ya Allah. Okay. Alright, so can you guys hear me? Sound working? Alhamdulillah, today the connection's been quite well. Have you guys heard of the new 5G? Yeah, so I was watching this video today about 5G, and it's very fast, I was impressed. Yeah, it goes to like 1 gig. Yeah, download speed, 1 gig. Alright, so let's continue then. Okay, so next question. How is the ruling on staying in Mecca and Mina for 15 days not entailing one is a traveller, since they are both separate places understood? Yeah, so according to Hanafis, that's what Hanafis understand. So if you go to, let's say you go for Hajj and you decide to stay there a total of, let's say, 15 days. But part of that is going to be in Mina, which is about 5 days in Mina, and the other days are going to be 10 days are going to be in Mecca. Then you consider a traveller. Yeah, you're not considered a resident. Recently, I mean, when I say recently, about maybe about 16 years ago, when I was in Pakistan Madrasa, many of the scholars from Pakistan had got together, and they actually wanted to go. They went to Saudi Arabia. They met with the ministry there, and they decided to measure the boundaries of Mecca and Mina and see if they overlapped and become one large city now. So they're two different locations but one large city, and they couldn't come to any conclusion, so they left it as it was. They said, we're going to leave it as it is. Mecca is a separate city, Mina is a separate city, so anyone who goes there now and they stay there in both places a combined amount of time, which does not entail staying in one place for 15 days or more, will be counted as a traveller. So yeah, so basically that's what we understand. Is another binding if a person did not say wallahi? No, it won't be. So another is only when you say wallahi, or if you put a condition to it. Yeah, like if you say, if I enter this door, I'm going to do this. If I enter this door, I'll give £100 in charity. If I swear, every time I swear, I'm going to give £100 charity. Then you have to basically, it's another, you got to give. If someone in Salat does Amal Kathir by flicking away a spider, then is the Salat invalid? I wouldn't count that as Amal Kathir. So Amal Kathir is considered, according to Hanafis, one of the meanings of Amal Kathir, which I think is the appropriate one, is basically where there's no islah of salat. So if you're doing something to correct your salat so that you get khushu and concentration in your salat, then that's not considered amal kathir. So much so if a snake's coming to you and you pick up a stick and whack it, or you stamp on it and you get back to your salat, it's still not amal kathir because that was for islah of salat. Yeah, so rectification of your salat for that purpose, then it's fine. It doesn't fall under. But if there's no need for it, like if you're not scared of spiders or you're not scared of flies, it's not affecting you anyway, and you just for no reason flick it, that might be considered to be something excessive and wouldn't require you to repeat your salat. What does it mean to use the verses of Allah as a joke? Some people make religious connected jokes and are accused of this by others, even when it's not mockery of religion. So when it says making a that they mock the religion, right? قُلِ اسْتَهْزِئُوا what's the ayah? That إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ وَنَلْعَبُ, we were just joking around. Istihza, when it is considered to be one of the emblems of Islam, like Allah is an emblem of Islam, so something that you think of it in your mind straight away, everyone's mind, every Muslim around the world, their mind goes towards Islam. That's counted as an emblem of Islam, like the Kaaba, Quran, Salat, etc. So if a person mocks these in a derogatory way, istighfafan, as though these things have no significance at all, then that would be considered to be mockery. Yeah, so that's the kind of mockery is understood. But if it's like, for example, just a kind of joke, it may be wrong, but not necessarily something that leads a person out of Islam. A person should avoid it, but not necessarily lead them out of Islam. So sometimes you get people making jokes about certain individuals, maybe certain scholars, or about certain maybe practices. Yeah, like someone might say, "Oh, this guy just whizzes around the Kaaba." Yeah, he just whizzes around the Kaaba, whizzes. And someone might say, "Oh, that's a joke," using the word whiz. But that wouldn't be considered to be mocking. They're actually mocking the person who is not kind of revering or not performing the tawaf in the correct manner. Yeah, so actually a good question this is. I think it's very important to understand the difference between mockery and belittling and joking, mockery and joking. Yeah, so again, there's, I think a lot of people they take things too black and white. If a person is bleeding in his mouth, I remember there's a famous scholar. His name was A'mash. So look him up, Al-Imam A'mash. He's a famous narrator of hadith as well. One of the famous teachers of Imam Abu Hanifa as well. And he has loads of jokes, right? And it was like one day he saw this guy, and he came in and he asked a question. So A'mash, he looks at him, and he says to everyone else, "Look at this guy. His beard is so big that you can put 1,000 fatwas in. He can hide 1,000 fatwas in his beard, and he's asking me questions that a kid would ask in maktab." Yeah, so if someone says, "Are you mocking fatwa? Are you mocking the beard?" Because the joke had the word beard in there. So are you mocking the beard? So obviously he's not mocking the beard, right? So it's a joke, something humorous, so very sarcastic. But people need to understand the difference between mocking and between humor as well. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes humor involves mocking, and in many cases it doesn't. Okay. If a person is bleeding in his mouth in salah, then what are they expected to do in salah to see if the wudu has broken or not? So, for example, if you get their hand and just put their lip on it or tongue or whatever, whichever's cut, and they see blood, count their wudu. Again, if they feel as though it's a lot, then they count their wudu to be broken. They go repeat their wudu again. But if they consider it a little bit, then it won't be broken. And if someone has broken their wudu, even as the imam, step out, go perform wudu, come back, continue. When it is said that the period of mourning is 3 days, what does this mean? It basically means that for 3 days you can only mourn the deceased, right? It doesn't mean that you don't wear makeup, or it doesn't mean that you don't go to work anymore, or you put a cloth over the TV, or you don't put the TV on, or you don't celebrate Eid, or you don't wear colorful clothing. Nothing to do with that. So mourning just means that for 3 days basically you console the family, you sit with them, you take out time. After 3 days you stop it, as in we shouldn't continue mourning a person over 3 days. That's what it means. So there's no special injunctions in those days. Does burping invalidate one's salat? No. Is it permitted to wear a Manchester United football top with devils on it? Is it permitted to wear an England top? Okay, so can you wear Manchester United top with a devil, that small little devil? If you look at the sign, a person who doesn't know Manchester United cannot tell that it's a devil. You have to be told it's a devil to kind of figure out, oh yeah, it's a devil. So it being an image doesn't really matter. I mean, it's too small for it to be counted as an image. If it's really big, massive, and you can clearly see that it looks like an idol, then you wouldn't be able to wear that in salat. But generally wearing it, there wouldn't be an issue. Is it permitted to wear an England top with a cross on it? That's a good question. I spoke to some people about this, and some said to me that, look, cross is still symbolic of the cross, George Cross, St. George Cross. And others said, no, well, it's not really considered to be a cross anymore in that sense, as in it's considered to be part of the flag. So you're not wearing the cross, you're actually wearing the flag. Yeah, and then it's like, well, what about the British flag? Or what about, something else, Red Cross, or in the organization? So there's so many things. So it's left it being a religious symbol, and it's now become something else, which is like a national flag, right? So I think if it's worn, I don't think there should be there's going to be an issue with that. Yeah. Okay. Alhamdulillah, questions are all answered. MashaAllah, MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Those of you guys who have stayed through, MashaAllah, you guys are amazing people, being able to hack all these questions. Right, let's answer some of your guys' questions now. Okay, so Arabic with Hafiz Shu'aib. Please cover the merciful nature of the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Good, that's a good topic. Good topic. In one of your lectures, you said that eating with the left hand isn't part of Sharia. As a Pakistani, that was one of the biggest shocks in my life. Can you explain a bit more? Yeah, I mean, like eating with the left hand, I don't think there's any madhab that says it's necessary to eat with the right hand. Yes, Hanafis say it's makruh tanzihi, like it's better not to do. Yeah, and the other madhabs, I'm sure the other madhabs are very similar to that. So eating with the left hand is not sinful to eat with the left hand, but it's best not to do. You should eat with the right hand, right? The emphasis should be on the right hand. And basically the Hanafis say it's not considered to be something which is part of the Sharia that Allah Ta'ala brought down with the Prophet ﷺ. It's not part of that Sharia. So the Sharia is basically those things of the religion which are to do with the Prophet ﷺ's leadership and the Prophet ﷺ's divine message for the hereafter, right? So eating with the left hand, the position you sleep in, wearing your right shoe and then your left shoe, or taking off your left shoe and your right shoe, or combing the hair in a certain way, cutting your nails in a certain way. This isn't considered part of the religion. This is considered to be part of etiquette. Yeah, part of etiquette. So imagine like there's this, like an apple. So the core of the apple is the Sharia. And then the pulp of the apple, the rest of it is like etiquette. So we have lots of etiquette that have been passed down to us, some through the Prophet ﷺ, some through the Sahaba, some through others. So, we get lots of etiquette nowadays. For example, like some of the etiquette of later scholars of mobile phones, how to use a mobile phone. Yeah, should you type with your right hand? Should you type with your left hand? Which one's better? Should you respond to the text as soon as someone sends it to you? If someone phones you, are you allowed to cancel their call? Do they have to ask you permission, send you a text beforehand saying, I'm going to phone you, is it okay, my name is so-and-so? My etiquette basically is if your number is not saved in my phone, I probably won't answer your call. Yeah, and simply because I get so many phone calls sometimes. And if I sit there answering people's calls, 10 minutes with one person, 15 with another person, and then a lot of my day goes by. So unless a person has texted me and given me like who they are and what the nature of their question is, then I'll answer it. Otherwise, I probably won't. So if you are one of those guys who got my number and call me, you probably won't get answer. So there's etiquette, and with general public, what tends to happen, they leave the core and they focus on the pulp. Yeah. So a lot of cultures, not just Pakistani culture, a lot of cultures like the slipper, upside down slipper, it's just an etiquette, nothing to do with the Sharia. It's just an etiquette. So this is why there were many things of etiquette that were done in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, manners that was done, but they weren't considered part of the Sharia. And people like pass them down, and you see it nowadays with like certain people who hold a certain like spiritual figure, like a peer or a mentor, and they like pass down every etiquette of theirs. They'll wear clothes like them, they'll keep the same length hair as them, same color clothing as them, they'll try to walk like them as well, even though it won't necessarily be from the Prophet ﷺ, but it's just something which is etiquette. Yeah, so I hope that answers that. Yesterday you mentioned that Arabs not being cultured is a misconception. That was a very interesting statement. Can you explain a bit more? I can't explain a bit more because there's lots to explain. But yes, Arabs there's a difference between being cultured and being advanced civilization. Arabs were not an advanced civilization, but they were very cultured people. Because they had, I mean, what is a culture? Culture is basically the way people live their lives, all the kind of things that they have. Thaqafa, they call it thaqaf in Arabic. Yeah, it's just kind of refining your life of how you eat, the dishes you eat, the times of the day you eat, how the food is prepared, what kind of clothing people wear, what kind of education system they have, how they interact with one another, the jobs they have, the names they give each other, the mode of transport that they have, their income, import and export. These are all cultural things that you have. So Arabs had all that, but it was just they weren't advanced as Persians and as Byzantines in them days. So you can see as today, for example, the West as being a first developed world, and the third world. So if someone says to you, oh, all third worlds are not cultured, well, that's wrong, days. Yeah, that's silly, that's just being ignorant. Many of the third world countries are probably have a richer culture than the developed worlds. Yeah, it's just that they're not advanced in technology and the way they do things as the developed worlds. Okay, if Muslim leaders don't rule by Sharia, they are out of the fold of Islam, right? Not necessarily. In Punjab, we have what's called a Jagt culture, or Jat culture. People make fun of physical features of their friends and other people, and mostly it's taken with good humor. But what would be okay Islamically? It's difficult to say. I mean, it depends how that culture. Yeah, I mean, see, sometimes what happens is you have a culture where, like for example, sometimes you have a culture where you can call someone big nose, or you can call someone big head, or something like that, and in the culture it'll be considered fine. One of them is like if you go to like Pakistan, I remember in Pakistan, Kalu is a kind of famous kind of nickname people have, and it's usually people who are very dark in complexion. Kalu, Kalia, Kalu, or anything of that kind of nature, and it's considered fine over there because it's a norm. People don't have an issue with it, and if you kind of say that over here, it's considered racist. It's considered to be something which is derogatory. So I think it all depends on culture as well. So if in that culture it's considered to be acceptable and it's not considered to be derogatory, anyone not hurting people, then I don't see an issue. Can a person be Muslim without praying? Yes. How much was it to go to Israel? You should have gone longer. I mean, I've been to Palestine, Israel 5 times now. So I'm kind of tired of being there for too long. Yeah, about a week is enough for me. I mean, the longest I've stayed there is about 3 weeks, almost a month. So okay, it costs about, I mean, it depends where you stay, all the hotel and everything, but on average it costs, if you want to go for like, let's say a week, 7 days, you're going to be looking at, including flights, if you book early, you're going to be looking at about between 700 to £1,000. Yeah, so between 700 per person. Is it fard to respond to our mothers when they call us? What ruling extend to their phone calls? Yeah, I mean, obeying your parents is a very important thing. So I think a good question that is, do you have to answer their phone calls? Yeah, because sometimes my mom calls me sometimes and I can't answer. I'm busy. Like driving the car or something, and So I think if you're free and you got the time, then I think you should answer them. Yeah, obedience to the parents is fard. Responding to them might not necessarily be the same when it comes to phone calls. It's a good question though. I'll have to kind of look that one up. Okay, Judaism, when it comes to feeding the poor, what's the best way? Not online donations, real life handing out. Find poor people in your community, local neighbors, friends, find out, ask local people if there's anyone that is struggling to make ends meet, and just buy them some shopping things, basic things that they might need: pasta, tomato tins, fruit, and just deliver it to the house. Say it is a gift. Wa alaikum assalam. Assalamu alaikum Abu Bakr. May Allah reward you. Ameen. Jazakallah khair Abu Bakr. May Allah reward you as well for your kind words. Omar Sheikh, can I read the Quran in my head without tajweed since I am a beginner? Yes, you can read it in your head. Korean boy, alaikum salam. You were supposed to give me your contact info since you were just. Oh yeah. I'll type it down here so you can, just in case I forget. So I don't know if you're still on. Are you still on, Caribbean boy? learningdeen@gmail.com. Yeah. Okay, that's my email. Okay, assalamu alaikum. Fun. Is playing games haram? No, as long as it's no gambling in there or missing your salats, it's fine. As a Muslim, if I do good deeds like giving water to someone thirsty, would I be rewarded even if I don't make an active niyyah every time I do? Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, and I think I mentioned this before, didn't I? I mentioned about the issue of, not to you guys, actually mentioned to someone else. So look, we know when we say you have to have an intention, your intention ultimately has to be for Allah. So anything good a person does in life, like, why did you do that for? Like, a man's going to enter Jannah because he removed an obstacle from the path. Why is he going to go Jannah? Because he moved an obstacle. Did he think about Allah when he did it? Not necessarily. He did it because he didn't want someone to get harmed. Because he didn't want someone to get harmed, that is that's one of the manifestations of doing it for Allah. So imagine doing things for Allah like umbrella, and under there many things come under there automatically, right? And then there's certain things that are outside the umbrella. You have to make like a deliberate intention for it to become for Allah. So for example, like feeding the poor, helping someone in need, automatically is for Allah. Like you automatically get a reward for it because you do it for the sake of Allah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Did the Prophet ﷺ know he was a prophet before the age of 40, before he announced prophethood? Are prophets born prophets? No, because the Quran says, ما كنت تدري ما الكتاب. You didn't know what the book was. والإيمان. You didn't know what Iman was. Yeah. So Allah is saying you didn't know, therefore the Prophet ﷺ wasn't aware of it. And if you look at the narrations regarding the first wahi, he didn't know that Allah was communicating with him. Okay, is there hadith about Allah creating Prophet light, then creating everything using Nur-e Muhammad, famously called Hadith Jabir? Yeah, there is a narration. Sheikh Abdul Hayy Laknawi mentions it as being fabricated or very weak. Please leave the tarkeebs and cover the ibarat in the Quduri videos. The way that will be helpful to complete more in less time. Okay, inshallah, I'll take that on board. I'll think about that. Is Ustad Abdul Rahman a good person for knowledge? I don't know Ustad Abdul Rahman. Yeah, I've never met the guy. I mean, you'd be shocked at how many scholars I probably know. Yeah, so I don't know many scholars, personally. I don't know many. Like you guys see them on social media. There are many scholars I do know personally. Like for example, Mufti Abdul Rahman Mangera, I know him. Mufti Ibn Adam, I know him. Sheikh Salman Yunus, I know him. Sheikh Suhail Hanif, I know him. I don't know Sheikh Noman Ali Khan. I've met him once. I don't know Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. I've never met him. I mean, who else? Sheikh Haytham Haddad, I know him. Okay, who else? I don't know. I don't know Sheikh Abdul Rahman Hassan. Okay. Next. Wa alaikum assalam. This time I'm sure MP. Oh, yeah, that reminds me. MP, yeah. And there was also Brother Hisham. These are two people that won a prize. So I bought them a prize from Palestine. So MP, you have to contact me, and Brother Hisham, you got to contact me for me to send you your prize. Yeah, because you guys got a prize from Palestine, and I bought it. Yeah, and I want to send it to you guys. So MP, if you're listening, yeah, get in contact with me, and Hisham as well. Okay. Next. Okay. Kamran, have struggled with waswasa, e.g. do kufr? If so, how do you deal with it? This is a very difficult thing. See, waswasa is not an Islamic thing per se. It's like OCD, right? It's got nothing to do with Islam. It's just to do with, it's just a natural human sort of way of trying to deal with things. And unfortunately, many Muslims get it. And some people think that you get it because you start practicing, and it's nothing to do with practicing. It's just some people are more inclined to it, naturally just have it more, and some people won't get it. It's just the way their minds are. What I would say to deal with waswasa is, I used to have this guy, he used to contact me about questions. And what the guy used to do was he had like 20 scholars' names in his contact list. The same question he would ask 20 scholars around the world. Some in England, some in South Africa, some in other places. And then, obviously, if you ask a question to 20 scholars, one scholar is going to say something different. So he would get shock and doubt and say, why is this one scholar said something slightly different? So this guy eventually, I don't know who he was, and then eventually he contacted me. I knew he was a local guy. And I said to him, look, I'm not going to answer any of your questions if you're going to be asking another scholar. If you want to ask me, you ask me. If you want to ask someone else, you ask them. But they don't ask me. That's what's causing your problems. So what I would say is people who are suffering from waswasa, the biggest problem is they read too much online stuff. Cut down on reading on online articles and online fatwas. Do not read Imam, or is it Ask Imam, or don't read anything. Just ask a scholar your questions. Choose one scholar and just ask them, can I ask you my questions? Just ask them. And that way, slowly, it'll just cut down. Because when you read articles and you read these websites, you're going to come across a whole spectrum of answers. And one of them is going to have a word or some phrase in there which is going to cause you doubt. Right? And I've got people come to me and say to me, Shaykh, have I committed kufr because, when I was reading Quran, the thought of a erotic thought came in my mind. Have I committed kufr? No, you haven't. Yeah. Anything in your mind is not kufr at all. In fact, people who are suffering from waswasa, the scholars in the books of fiqh have actually got different rulings for them. Very light rulings. Yeah, and it's just like extremely light opinions for them. Very, very easy opinions. Because of their waswasa condition. And some people, like, their marriages are broken up because of waswasa. They've actually lost their jobs because of waswasa. Because it's just caused them so much stress all throughout the day. They're just thinking about, am I still a Muslim or not? Yeah. And they'll go to such lengths to try and understand. Okay. Next. Tawsif Mahmood. I'm prone to feelings of despair. Sometimes, like today, it gets overwhelming and I tend to feel very negative and depressed. Jazakallah khair for the message. Tawsif, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you comfort. May Allah give you hope. May Allah inspire you, give you positive feelings inside. We all get this. Yeah, it's something I know. Subhanallah. You guys probably don't even think about me. Sometimes I get these feelings as well. I get feelings of despair and I feel low sometimes, and I have to get myself out of it. Yeah, so maybe just to go for a little walk or something. Maybe, I don't know, treat yourself to something, eat some nice food or something, or go somewhere with some friends that you know, or get your mind off something. Sometimes it just takes time to get over it. Sometimes you just got to do something else to switch your mind. But I pray, Tawsif, brothers, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fills your heart with happiness and hope. Okay, next, Aisha Rawat. Wa alaikum assalam. Is kosher meat suitable to consume even if it's not a necessity? Yes, it's fine. You can consume it. I mean, some of the scholars, they say things like the Hanafis, their opinion on eating kosher is that they have to say the name of God when they're cutting, and many of the kosher organizations, they don't have that as a condition. as long as a rabbi is present and as long as the knife is of a certain knife and they cut the jugular vein and it's done by a Jew, then it's fine. So many of the Hanafis say you can't eat kosher meat because they don't say the name of Allah. However, other madhabs they say you don't need to have the name of Allah mentioned as long as Ahl al-Kitab is cutting it. So that's why many Hanafis are against it, and they say you should only resort to it as a last necessity. And I think another reason why they say you should only resort to it as a last necessity is because you don't want to kind of like lose that kind of importance of halal. So if people resort to kosher, what's going to happen is people are not going to consider halal, and therefore, it kind of they lose the importance of doing something in the more halal way, as in a Muslim doing it. I think that's why they do it. But if you're in, let's say, in fact, kosher meat is actually considered more healthy. The way that they bring up the animal is actually more healthy than many of the even HMC approved meat. Yeah, that's an interesting fact, that is. Because they actually have to take care of the animal, not just the slaughtering. As the Muslims, it's just as long as you cut the veins and a Muslim is there and he says Bismillah Allahu Akbar, khalas, you can eat it. But they actually have other conditions. Animal has to be healthy and this and that. And in Palestine, I ate kosher meat on many occasions when I went there the first time, because it's available everywhere. Nearly every shop has to be kosher, halal in the Muslim areas and kosher in the Jewish areas. I thought if my mum calls me, I am supposed to even break my namaz and respond to her if it's nafil namaz. Is that true? Many of the scholars say that, yeah, if it's considered to be something which will upset her, yeah, but not necessarily in all conditions. Some of the scholars say in all conditions. Some of them say only if you know that it's gonna upset your mum is something really important. But if your mum calls you and she knows that when you're in salat, right, you don't need to respond, then it's fine. So you just look at how your mum would deal with it. Okay, you missed my inheritance question. Which one was that? Okay, how should the inheritance be distributed after a person dies? Culturally, we do not do it while the mum's alive. Should she be allowed to spend from that wealth? How should the inheritance be distributed after a person dies? We don't do it while the mum's alive. We don't do it while the mum's. I don't understand. So who's died? Has the father died? Okay, Sarfraz Jasad. Wa alaikum assalam. Sarfraz Jasad. It's been so long, bro. What's happening? It's been so long. I probably met your dad more than I met you. So Sarfraz, we need to get in touch, bro. We need to Leicester. I need to come down to Leicester and come after you. Jazakallah khair, Sarfraz. And give my salam to your dad as well. And to your uncle as well. Yeah. Okay. According to modern zoology, prawns are not fish. However, according to classical Arab dictionaries, prawn is considered a fish, which is correct according to the usul of giving fatwa. So this is an interesting one. This is when it comes to early understanding of what sea creatures are. So the early understanding of sea creatures is based upon the shape of the animal. So Mufti Taqi Usmani, he mentions that the Arabs were just considered fish, samak, to be something that was in the shape of fish. Yeah, shape. So that's why if the animal is in the shape of a fish, like it has a fin or fins and it has tail and it has gills, they consider it to be fish shaped. So any animal that's basically fish shaped, we can eat. I think that's what they basically base it on. However, like when it comes to prawns and things like that, it's very difficult because there's many new creatures that people have found which are not mentioned by early Arabs, and it's difficult to kind of say, well, prawns is like a fish shape if you think about it. It's long, it's got a tail, it looks very, if you stretch it out, it looks fish-like. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I eat prawns. If you should fatwas use modern definitions or classical Arab definitions, I would say there is scope in these kind of things to look at modern understanding as well. However, because the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith Abu Dawud that mentions two dead things have been made halal for you and one is fish, you have to understand what the Arabs understood as fish in them days. So that's why the definition of fish being the fish shape would be more practical. Otherwise, if you use the modern understanding of it, what is the, I don't know what the modern understanding is. Some classical Arab dictionaries actually say prawns. Like when you say classical, what do you mean classical? Like, see, the thing is, dictionaries actually came out after the madhabs were developed. So, if you can tell me where to look, because Lisan al-Arab, these came like 600-700 years later. But if you have like a classical sort of like a source for how early Arabs used like usage of it, because I haven't found it in any of the fiqh books, but maybe there could be some early texts that mention. So if you can show me early text for that. Okay, brother Tawsif, please listen to Sheikh Asim. Okay, how soon? And yes, when the father dies, it should be distributed as soon as possible. Yeah, as in, even if the mother is still alive, they should amongst themselves just allocate what is for each person. And if they want to give their share away to the mother, that's up to them, because then it just causes fights. Jazakallah for answering the questions. Not too late. Please show us a book. Oh yeah, no, but some classical Arabic dictionaries actually say the prawns are okay. Playing Monopoly haram. Assalamu alaikum. Could you please talk about practicing Islam in Europe? Am I going to be better in terms of practicing Islam in the UK compared to living in Pakistan, Saudi or UAE? Okay, I'm going to finish in a bit. Yeah, because it's been quite long as well now. Okay, is playing Monopoly haram? No, it's not necessarily haram if it doesn't involve gambling, like physical gambling, or it doesn't involve missing a prayer. Okay. Could you please talk about practicing Islam in Europe? Am I going to be better off in terms of practicing Islam in the UK in comparison to living in Pakistan? It's very difficult to say. It would be easier, obviously, with regards to Islamic ethics and morals, bring up your children in those kind of places than in the West, I would say. So generally, this is not always the case, but generally, yeah, I think in these kind of places, practicing your Islam, the morals, the ethics, even though there is a lot of evils there as well, but overall, looking at the lesser of the two evils, practice, yeah, again, it's one of those ones. So I haven't really kind of tested all the places. I've just lived in Pakistan for a long time and in the UK, so I can tell you about that. So in Pakistan, yeah, generally people have a more affiliation towards the morals and ethics of Islam. They understand it better. They kind of have a good upbringing, you can say, in that sense. Not exactly angels, but alhamdulillah. Would you class money as a commodity or just as a method of exchange? The modern understanding of a fish that is cold-blooded and has gills. Okay, cold-blooded, yeah. So that means things like whales and things wouldn't be fish. Interesting. Does a pious person feel the pains of death? Yeah, everyone feels the pains of death. Everyone feels it. Yeah, everyone feels the pains of death. Okay, so Jazakumullah khairan. Let me just check what book. Okay, so what book is there here? Actually, I don't know what book to choose for you guys. Okay, I think I've shown you guys this book before. Alright, this is a new book I've got, right? This is a new book. Okay, so this new book, I've started reading it. So, I just read about 15 pages so far. This is my uncle told me about this book. It's called Prisoners of Geography. Right, so Prisoners of Geography is the name. And I think it's a very interesting book. It basically talks about, it's written by a journalist. His name is Tim Marshall. Probably heard of him on news and media. So he talks basically about why is it that geography plays an important role in how politics is shaped in different parts of the world. So for example, he discusses things like the issue with Russia and how Russia became so big, and why the countries after the USSR broke off from Russia, and why the Russia was interested in Ukraine, and why Russia was interested in Afghanistan, and why Russia are making allies with Syria at the moment, and things like China. Why is China interested in building infrastructure in many other countries around the world, especially Africa, South America, Pakistan as well? These countries, what are the interests of China? And also, why is China persecuting the Muslims in the West part of China? Also America as well. Why is America so strong in their trade, and why is South America so weak despite them being roughly in the same part of the world? So all these kind of things, very, very interesting, yeah, I must say. And I like these kind of things because it helped me a lot in fiqh, basically. So when you kind of try to think about in the past fiqh, why scholars gave fatwas on certain things, and you understand what the sort of like the factors that were affecting the shaping of the fiqh in them days, it makes a person appreciate like how decisions are made. So sometimes, for example, like when we see the news and like Turkey makes a decision regarding Israel or some other country, people just say things like, oh, Turkey shouldn't have done that, Turkey should have done this. So we just become armchair critics, and we kind of say things like, this is how it is, this is how they should have done it, this is how Imran Khan should have run the country, this Imran Khan should not have made taken a loan from the IMF, or he should have done this, and he should use his nuclear weapons against India, or so when we say these kind of things, we're speaking like kids in the nursery, about things that grown-ups are doing, right? So it's like very, very sort of like premature sort of statements we're making, and we don't understand. It's only later on when we look retrospectively and we realize, oh yeah, this was what was going on in the world at that time. These were the kind of things that the politicians or the leaders had to look at. I'm not saying all the politicians are perfect, and none of them is greedy, and none of them have other ulterior motives. They have that. But this book is a very good insight. This book, I didn't buy this book. My uncle told me about this book. So my uncle, he deals in risk assessment for companies, and at the moment he's into things like artificial intelligence, and how companies need to invest in more artificial intelligent sort of like products, because that's where the government now economy is going to be in artificial intelligence now. It's moving away from the old things. And if you think about like the past, so build the houses in the same way, the cities in the same way, their weapons were roughly the same, you can say. There wasn't like a big leap in technology, and it was only when Industrial Revolution happened that so many new things came. So the fatwas that were being given in the early, let's say, 1,000 years, right? Not even 1,000 years, 800 years or so, 900 years early, right? You can tell that later on now, those fatwas are going to be affected by how things are going to change. Not in everything, obviously. So, for example, like, print publishing, gunpowder being developed, people creating airplanes that fly, the electricity. All these things are definitely going to have a big effect on how people see the society, how countries develop, how leaders, they run their countries as well. So he was telling me about this, and he was telling me about this other book. It's called I forgot what the name of the book is now. Amos Deus. I think it's called Amos Deus. It's by an Israeli guy, professor. He's written this book, and he's basically talking about how society's next stage now, which is artificial intelligence, and how artificial intelligence is basically going to be the next big leap for society, revolution in society, in how we live our lives. And he I found this at home, so he had left a message in there for me as well. MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair. But this is the book to get, guys, if you're interested in that kind of stuff. If you're not interested in that kind of stuff, then alhamdulillah, there's lots of other things that you guys can read. Okay, so is jihad fard in Kashmir? Allah knows best. People don't pay tax due in the UK or knowingly take fake social help? Is it permissible halal in Islam? I mean, see, again, as long as you're not lying, the issue of saying you're not lying to them, that necessarily wouldn't be wrong, but it might be morally wrong. It's chipping in and paying for it. Okay, people don't. Sarfraz, I have a HSBC Sharia pension scheme at work. Involves a 4 times base salary lump sum payout in case of death in service. Is this permissible to be involved in, or is it akin to life insurance? Okay, you know what you'd have to do? If you email me the whole the masala, because it's very difficult. It's very difficult to see this one. So if you can email me the exact the detailed terms and conditions of this, then I'll be able to look it up. Because just by saying it just like that, there could be wording in the contract which changes the whole thing. So email it to me, yeah, and inshallah, if I don't know the answer, I'll show it to one of my colleagues, and inshallah I'll get back to you on that. Okay, so Jazakallah khair, guys. Thank you very much for today's live interaction. I really enjoy talking to you guys, mashallah. And inshallah I will see you all next time, guys. Yeah, thank you very much. Is there anything else you guys want to say besides asking questions? No, nothing else. It's very late as well, and tomorrow's Jum'ah, so for Jum'ah you should try and pray Fajr as well, and freshen yourself for Jum'ah. Nice clothes, smell nice. Yeah, and I've got to prepare my talk for Jum'ah tomorrow as well, inshallah. So inshallah, I haven't prepared that. I'm going to do it now, inshallah. And I will see you guys next time. So thank you all, and again, MP, if you're watching, and Hisham, brother Hisham, if you're watching, then contact me, because I want to post out to you guys your prizes that you won, yeah, in the Palestine live streams. You're welcome, Lone Pa and Sunny Black. Take care, guys. Remember your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.